What's up, guys? And in today's video, I'm going to be going through the current founder struggles from the trenches and what is actively going on these past few months, how I've been able to solve them, and the active challenges that I'm facing at the moment. And why I'm doing this is to basically show our builds live and raw, what we're actively building out, and showing you the process and the frameworks that I'm actively just using on a daily basis to solve problems and to solve big messy problems within this and to build a crew that gets it. So basically just to build a network of people that understand what it is that we're building and actively just want to help us in that journey as well. And the first lesson that I have been learning and have learned over the past few months is that the learning to guide through chaos, of which the current struggle for me personally is leading a team at 22 is wild, and half the time I'm actively figuring stuff out as it happens. For me personally, just figuring stuff out is the number one thing that I always strive to do. But I do also just need to take into consideration that I am still young. I'm still learning and figuring things out as they happen. And new challenges just keep arising as time goes. And although I can just say, hey, I don't want to face this anymore, it's part of the journey. It's part of the things that I'm actively choosing to solve at this current present moment in time. And what I'm actively doing to solve this is to set tight goals. For example, 100 emails per week for my SDR, 15-hour product sprints specifically for me. So just basically setting tight goals that allow us to hit those specific goals in a specified time, to basically just try to understand what it is that we need to build and just actively be moving the needle forward and picking what are the actionable steps that I need to be taking to move the needle forward on the daily basis. And with this also comes with owning the mess. For example, if my team slips, I can only coach harder and not blame each individual. Most of the time for me, this is something that I have had to learn on a daily basis, to just say, hey, I need to take more accountability because these are my team members, and if they mess up, it's always asking the question, how can I improve? How can I build better systems or frameworks or SOPs for them to understand how to make sure that it doesn't happen again? And it's not a blaming process. It's not, hey, you did XYZ. It's where did we as a team fall short? And this is where my OCDAM framework comes in, where we basically make sure that we say, hey, what are the key decisions that we need to take, and how do we achieve our goal, and also just measure it with actionable steps. And with this also comes with staying visible. So daily check-ins, Loom updates, clarity cuts chaos, because the number one thing is building for clarity is the number one thing for a team, especially for me as I'm going on in this journey and just understanding a lot more that clarity has to be the number one thing. And also asking myself on an active daily basis is, if I were to explain this to someone in my team, would they understand it in 60 seconds? And if not, how can I reduce the friction, or the friction in terms of them understanding, and break it down easy so that they can simply just take what I have and implement it straight away? And the grounding question that I always like to have is, what's one way I failed my team this week and how do I fix it tomorrow? For example, let's say I was not communicating the right actionables because I was specifically didn't want to, make them feel as if, hey, like you messed up. But that is not the way to go about it. It's just asking myself, how have I shown up and how am I constantly showing up for the team? And what's the one thing that I failed throughout this week, and just taking accountability on that. Because one of the things that I know that into the future as we continue to build is just being able to take accountability for what it is that we are actively building. And as a founder or the team leader, is just more taking accountability as to, hey man, if we screw up, it's all on me, it's not on the team. Most of the time, yes, but it's just mostly just understanding how to better navigate that throughout the journey. And the second thing is just growing, leveling up the crew daily. So the current struggle at this present moment in time is the team's green, and I'm pushing them to level up while I'm still learning myself. Just to be fully transparent, I am actively learning. You can never say for me that you are the most learned person, if that even makes sense, to say like, hey, I know every single thing in the playbook. Well, I don't, unfortunately, and that's just the truth. And I just constantly need to keep learning, reading books, and just understanding by trying and failing. That is the number one thing that I actively take on a daily basis, just to also implement into the team that, hey, we are a growth mindset based team, and we're actively seeking ways to grow whatever we're doing and asking the questions of how can we improve the product that we're building today so that in the next 5-10 years it's still usable and we've built a solid foundation which allows us to continuously just innovate that in cycles. And what I'm doing actively to solve this is daily coaching, 30 minutes with my SDR, tweaking lemless emails for 20% opens. So basically just keeping on refining the machine, just understanding, hey, I need to be active with my team, just understanding, hey, how are they seeing things? How are they seeing through their lens? And actively just coaching them through that and saying, hey, I want to also understand how we're building this out so that I can better, build and teach people how to basically understand how to do certain things. And with that, skill sprints, and this is also very important, you don't want to be all doing the same thing. I think this is self-explanatory. One person on the team learns Notion, and then I master Retool for build. So specifically saying, hey, if one team member is focusing on one specific project task, the other ones need to specifically learn different ones so that we're all working in sync, and then we come together and say, hey, how are we actively building this ship? And failing fast, which is one of the number one things that I like to implement, which is failing fast, being able to rapidly test things and seeing, hey, if do they actively work? And small flops teach big wins, especially when you're just starting out, or specifically in this phase where you just need to be testing out as many things as possible, because the bigger and harder things get, the less easier it becomes, I believe, to basically test as rapidly. And that is the number one advantage that I see while still being in this specific phase, where you can just rapidly test things, throw things at the wall, and if it works, if it sticks, then you go with it, and if it doesn't, then that is what it is. And the grounding question I always like to keep in mind over here is, what's one skill that my team needs to crush the higher level deals? And am I actively teaching this? And this can be anything. This can be, hey, we need better project management skills, which I'm actively learning so that I can implement this within the team. And then the team understands, hey, we need to manage issues much clearer. We need to have a process in which we build the issues that we have and actively implement those cycles and actively implement other strategies that we may need, and just constantly refining the machine and just learning what it is that we're building and just constantly just building from that. And third one is loop. While building better feedback loops is the number one thing that I always preach about, and I spoke about this in yesterday's video, where the current struggle is, without feedback, I'm blind, guessing what works sucks. And this is my philosophy. If there's anything, this has to be the number one thing that I'm actively trying to implement. Good or bad feedback is the number one thing that I want to just, have within my arsenal, because with data, with feedback, you're able to move better, able to move more strategic, and also understand where the team is lacking and where they lack clarity and where they need a bit of push. And with that, what I'm actively doing to solve this is daily team check-ins to say, hey, what's blocking 20 emails? What is the problem that we need to fix today? And then just basically having client polls, for example, saying, hey, what chaos needs killing? What specific issue are you having within your business that needs solving in this present moment in time? And how do we actively solve this? And the team retro, which is weekly asking what broke and what is next. I think this is the number one thing of having weekly cadences where you basically just asking, hey, what broke this week and how can we actively improve that so that it never happens again? And how do we implement better strategies in order to combat this ever happening again? And just going through that cycle of understanding what is the feedback that we need right now in order to build better, to move more agile, and to also scale what we're doing at this present moment in time. And the grounding question that I always like to ask is, what's one piece of feedback that I ignored this week and why did I ignore it? For me personally, just understanding feedback is super important. Specifically, just as a founder, most of the time, I believe that, you think that everything is going right or you have the answers, but sometimes you just need to take a step back and ask yourself, hey, what is the feedback that I ignored? Because that feedback could be the reason why one specific area is not proving or showing the results that it needs to in that present moment in time. And then why is that? Why is this actively happening, and how can we actively solve for this? And number 4 is tackling harder problems, which is the number one thing that I always strive to do. And the current struggle is clients chaos problems feel like mountains, and I'm still learning to climb them, which is true because actively in this present moment in time, every challenge feels a lot harder the more you start doing more complex things, and you start to understand different levels of complexities that you never even imagined, and then you have to solve these on an active daily basis. And it's just asking yourself, okay, this feels like a mountain today, but how can I break it down into small actionable steps so that I can tackle this mountain and just build up the reps and build up the mental resilience in order to say, hey, if this comes up in the future, how do we actively solve this while I'm learning to do this? And this, I believe, just comes from building better feedback loops, and just constantly just mapping what it is that we need to solve. And what I'm actively doing to solve this is mapping the chaos, vendor delays, budget leaks. What is it? What is the thing that needs to be mapped in order to understand what is the root cause of this? And prototyping fast, building an MVP fix within 3 days, and then testing it out, seeing does it work, and test and tweak saves 50K. For example, if it saves 50K, scale it. If it doesn't, scrap it. So basically just saying, hey, we have targets that we want to hit, and if it's below those KPIs, then hey, we're probably going to scrap it. And also just being super tactical in terms of building this out and just understanding how to best utilize this. And the grounding question that I always just want to always hammer down is asking myself, what's the hardest chaos that I am personally dodging, and how does solving it unlock the next level of scale? And this is just taking an approach of constantly being a lifelong learner, of just understanding what is the hardest thing that I'm dodging, because most of the case I have personally found that the thing that I'm struggling or avoiding is the number one thing that I should be doing to actively move the needle within the business. And most of the case, when I say, hey, it's time to just solve this problem right now and not push it up for later, that's when things just start flowing. And I believe this to be the same, especially when working with the team as well. And this is something that I just always just want to constantly hammer down into myself and also into the team. And the 5th one is build for scale, of which the current struggle is I'm building for build wins, but the overarching goal is 100x harder. Small thinking won't cut it. Simply just won't cut it. Thinking small is the number one killer of so many things that I found personally, and being able to think a lot bigger than you could ever imagine has been the number one thing that has allowed me to basically see patterns in things that we are building that weren't there until we've actually built it out. And just thinking bigger goes a long way, because you see what is possible, then you see more that's possible than you would have if you were thinking small. If you're thinking that there's limitations in terms of what you could build, then there are going to be limitations. But if you're actively taking the approach of, hey, what is the number one thing that sounds ridiculous today, but we can build the future by building it, and then actively taking the steps to build that. It may not be fully built out in the first version, but maybe in V5 or 6 we'll fully have it. But then it's just about building the foundation such that in V5 or 6 that we do have that solid grounding and understanding and data as well into how we built this out to the scale and how we can scale it up even further. And asking what I'm actively doing in this current present moment in time is thinking bigger and asking the questions of, can this system handle 100 clients? And if it doesn't, what can we do to actively build to 100 clients, and then eventually build to 1,000, to 2,000, to 3,000, to 1,000,000 clients? And automating, building the tool stack that's scalable for delivery. The number one thing for me is building an infrastructure that is scalable into the future, not just for today. And this also involves having the right tool stack in terms of what we're building out, because some certain tools may not be able to handle the level of scale and also complexities that we're actively trying to build on a daily basis. And also hiring slow. So basically train my team to train others, basically helping them and saying, hey, I want you for the long term, and I just want to grow and build with you, and I want you to be able to train others, because you're going to be the person that one day someone is going to go to and say, hey, how do we solve this problem? And you need to be the one that's actively there to approach it and say, hey, we solve XYZ, and you're able to just funnel down the information or funnel down the steps and systems that we have built out from the beginning, that we constantly refine, and just easily explain it to the new person that is coming on, and then just have them plug and play that. And then the grounding question that I like to add or ask here is, what's one system I'm building small, and how do I scale it to a level that allows us to think bigger? What is the one thing that we're actively building small or thinking small about that we could actively scale? For example, this was a interesting thing that we had a few weeks back, where we essentially realized, or I realized, that one of the things that we are actively building was a core fundamental in the business's process, but I didn't see that until I tested it and implemented it with something else. And then I realized, hey, this is actually bigger than what I initially anticipated for. And that is now what we're actively hammering down by just truly understanding what it is that we're building and just constantly refining the machine. I know that into the future we'll be basically building one of the things that we'll look back on these days and say, hey, we were taking the proactive approach of understanding how to build this, and now into the future, because we took the steps and we took this understanding, we're able to build a better product for our clients. And for example, that thinking small will always lead you, for me at least, I found that will always lead you into thinking that there's limitations, when most of the case those limitations are just your mind and your limitations that you've created for yourself. And by removing those limitations, you can build something that you never even thought was possible. And that is what I'm actively trying to solve for in this present moment in time, and just actively just trying to show that in the builds that we're doing, and just actively just showing what it is that we're struggling with, and just going through the process of understanding and just building on that. And some of these things may not be an immediate fix, yeah, that's for sure, but into the future, I know some of these things that we're actively solving in this present moment in time, or that I'm actively solving in this present moment in time, will be the foundations of what we're building into the future. And for that, I'm super excited, and I can't wait to see what it is that we're going to be continually refining the machine and thinking bigger, and also solving hard problems. I think that is the number one way that I will actively grow on this. I mean, I'm still figuring it out. We're still in the trenches. We're still building out these products, and we're still just truly getting down to the bottom of what it is that we're truly trying to build for the future, not just for now, but for the future. And as we scale, we're just going to be reviewing these videos and just seeing, hey, this is our framework or way of thinking in this present moment in time, and how has that changed in the last 6, 12, 18 months, and just constantly just refining the machine from that. And yeah, that's been my biggest struggles that we have been facing with in this current present moment in time. If there are more, we'll just basically do a summary of them, and we'll just go through them again. But yeah, if you enjoyed this video, just let me know if you having any struggles as well that you can relate to. And yeah, we'll just I'll see you in the next one.